Slamdance is the punk rock film festival.
Like all good Hollywood stories, this one starts with me coming out of the proctologist's office one day.
A little bit of hoity-toity. Sundance can be a little hoity-toity.
A tranny-loving Brazilian golf blogger.
You've gone full DIY.
And I've now made more money renting out my house than I have from directing.
How did you get the $1 million? It's the number one question. How did you get the $1 million?
You can't make money at this business. I mean,
how did you get the $1 million for your movie?
I'm too lazy to do a podcast. So I appear on other people's podcasts. This is PodCRASH with that Chris Gore.
Welcome to the show. I am that Chris Gore. This is PodCRASH. This is the show where you get to hear a different podcast each week in which I appear as a guest. On the show today, a great friend of mine.
Wonderful friend.
A wonderful friend of
Dear
mine.
friend.
Dear friend.
Very old friend.
From, gosh, so it's almost 20 years. Wait a sec.
It's got, I was 18 years-ish, something like that.
Yeah.
A long time.
And a filmmaker, one of the founders of the Slamdance Film Festival, and an indie film guru, as it were, Dan Mirvish.
Dan Mirvish.
Dan Mirvish, welcome to the show. I'm super excited because today I'm crashing a show called Indie Film Nation. So I'll be talking about all things indie film on Indie Film Nation, which is going to come at the very end of the show. So we're going to talk for a little bit about all things indie film.
We'll talk.
And then I'm going to put the clips at the very end. So just to let you guys know that and our listening audience. But Dan, I really wanted to have on because he's got a new film coming out, and we'll talk about that. We will talk about Between Us in the course of our discussion.
Just between us. We will talk about Between Us.
Between Us, we will talk about Between Us.
Yes.
But
rhymes with penis.
And you did that on purpose. But Dan, I knew you as one of the people in the indie film world that I can always trust to tell the truth. You're the guy that in the room, I know when I walk up to you and someone will give their big speech about whatever the hell it is, and it could be at a different film festival or whatever, it could be some
panels.
celebrity.
We've been on a lot of panels together.
Panels, whatever. Yeah, exactly. And on a panel,
Hot tubs.
In a pub, hot tubs, yes. And
yes.
I'm one of the founding.
We are the two founders. You and I are the two co-founders of the annual Slamdance Hot Tub Summit.
That's right. And I'm embarrassed by photos of that. Because the first one I definitely had, I did not work out for that.
Well, how do you think I got on the podcast?
Right, exactly.
Was by threatening to expose those pictures of you.
Precisely.
Yes.
But you've done so much in your career with regard to indie film, and Slamdance being a huge feather in your cap.
By the way, calling it a career, I thank you very much.
Yes, I know. Just as someone who has had his share of failures in the world of indie film, I consider you one of the success stories because you've gone full DIY.
Yes.
Full DIY in many respects. And I want to go through aspects of your career, and we'll get to Between Us, but let's talk about the formation of Slamdance. For those who do not know, the Slamdance International Film Festival is one of the top film festivals in the world. And I would know because I wrote this book about film.
Because you wrote a book and you called it that.
And in it, I proclaim it to be, and I believe it is, because it's harder to get into Slamdance than it is to get into Sundance.
Yes, because we don't show nearly as many films as Sundance, but we take almost the same number of submissions. So
right.
Statistically, it's harder to get into. But it's realistically easier to get into in the sense that, and let's just talk about what Slamdance is. It takes place at the same time as Sundance. The focus is first-time directors with limited budgets and without distribution in place. And so it's intrinsically, it's a much more sort of democratized way of getting into a festival in the sense that the way our programming works, every film gets seen by at least two people. There's no early invitations. We don't go to Toronto and say, oh, we really like you, but we don't like you. We'll take your film. So even though there are fewer slots to get into, it's a much more fair system, you could say, of getting into those slots. So,
and as someone,
any schmo from Nebraska has as much of a shot of getting in as some schmo from LA or New York.
Well, I will say, as someone who has been rejected from Slamdance,
yes,
that I do think it is one of the more fair. I actually, you know what? Like, I would not want to get into a festival if I thought someone was trying to kiss my ass. Like, just be like, if the project that I had made they didn't feel was up to snuff, I'd feel bad about getting in, taking a slot away just because someone thought they were trying to do me a favor.
Yeah. I was in that film.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I totally
still
forgot.
Didn't get in.
That's right. Oh my God, you're in. We're talking about My Big Fat Fat Independent Movie, which I co-wrote and produced, and Dan Mirvish is in the film playing. What was the exact title?
Rabbi number 2, I believe. Is
You were
the
Rabbi number 2.
I still have the shirt that says Rabbi number 2 on the label.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah.
You stole that wardrobe?
No, I did not not technically stealing it, because I had brought my own shirt and somehow it got switched with this. So someone has my shirt. You stole my shirt. I just stole your shirt.
It was a shirt trade.
It was a trade.
It was a shirt off.
Yeah.
But now let's talk about, for those who don't know, let's talk about the formation of Slamdance, because I find it to be one of the more inspiring stories. If anything, Slamdance inspired all the other dances that invade, during Sundance and Park City. There have been in the past, not so much more recently, but there have been things, everything from slam dunk to lap dance to
no dance to van dance, all kinds of things.
Yeah, there's a million of them, but Slamdance was the first. So
first and has stayed the longest. Yeah.
Yeah, give us the tweet version.
So
No, I'm kidding.
I'll give you the podcast version.
Give me the podcast version. No, it's a great inspiring story.
1894 for those of you old enough. It was an interesting time in independent film. Like, broadly speaking, that was the same year that Miramax sold to Disney. That was the same year that Fine Line sold to Warner Brothers. The institutions of independent film were maturing, for better or for worse. So that was the year that Sundance, for example, started to take more films that were by second-time directors and alumni directors, and they kind of forgot about the niche of the first-time directors. And of course, by the mid-'90s, there were people like me and like other filmmakers who were inspired by Richard Linklater and Robert Rodriguez and Steven Soderbergh, who were kind of like that first generation of kind of indie, late 80s, early 90s indie filmmakers. But by then, there just wasn't a place for us to go. So a number of us had met at the Independent Feature Film Market, which is, no one even remembers what that is. It's an IFP thing in New York. But traditionally, like the year before us, that's where Kevin Smith got discovered, with Clerks. He was discovered there and invited to Sundance. We all thought that was going to happen to us, And I was Mr. Hotshot there. We had this film called Omaha the Movie. Robert Altman was our mentor on it. He showed up at our screening. Everyone was there, very excited about it. His grandson, Dana Altman, was my producing partner, still is on some things. And we had like the only color poster there, so we were like the hot film. Anyway, so we thought that, we would get into Sundance. I even had a distributor tell me point blank, "We love your film, and we will pick it up if it gets into Sundance." No shame about it. It was like that was just very matter of fact. That's how it is. And
you mean that thing that you can't control?
Yes.
You getting into Sundance.
Yes,
you can't
exactly.
control that, that
you can
result.
Because that was the thing about filmmaking, is you can control everything. You can control how you raise your money, how you shoot it, who you cast, everything about it until that last gatekeeper. And that gatekeeper was Sundance,
Right. Mm.
And so as it turned out, though, out of the 95 completed films that year at the Independent Feature Film Market, Sundance did not take a single one of them.
Ugh.
Not a single one. So we had heard about a couple filmmakers the year before who had done their own little renegade screenings in Park City. And those filmmakers were Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who had their first film, Cannibal the Musical, didn't get into Sundance. They did their own little screening in their hotel room.
But it did get picked up by Troma.
Later,
Right.
after they did South Park. This is before then. But we had the same lawyer or same law firm as Trey and Matt, so we kind of had heard about these guys. And there was another filmmaker, James Marandino, did the same thing with the film he had. So we thought, okay, that's kind of going to be our plan B. We'll just do our own little renegade screening in Park City. Because if you didn't go there, you were screwed. You wouldn't get distribution. You wouldn't get into other festivals. You wouldn't get into regional festivals. You wouldn't get into other foreign festivals. Because they all used that Sundance program as shorthand. So... but then one of our colleagues, one of the other filmmakers, a guy named Shane Kuhn, he had the idea, why don't we take that idea and combine it with an idea that Dana had of getting filmmakers around the country to cooperate with each other? Why don't we get a dozen features, a dozen shorts to come up with a name that would look good on a T-shirt, came up with Slamdance, and do our own little renegade screenings in Park City. And basically we showed up there, got a room 30 feet down the hall from Sundance, and started screening our movies. And then we decided, well, let's keep doing it every year since then.
When was the move to the TMI, the Treasure Mountain Inn?
Treasure Mountain Inn was the
second
third
year?
year.
Third year?
Third year, yeah. The second year we were at the Yarrow. Because what happened is Sundance really tried to kick us out every year.
Like out of the city?
Out of the city, yeah. I mean,
Whoa.
They were in cahoots with the police chief Bell, who's since retired. And it was like, it's a small town. It's
Right.
a small western town. And, this town ain't big enough for the both of us. and we were a real threat to them. Redford called us parasites in Interview magazine or something like that, which, the best press we ever got. And
He acknowledged your presence.
he did, yeah. No, I mean, we came on the scene, and then Sundance, to their credit, got better. They created, at first it was the Spectrum section, which we
American Spectrum. That was
American Rectum, and you didn't want to get in or out, but and they were fairly blatant that that was a response to Slamdance, and now they have another section called Next. It's still essentially the same idea, and so I think their programming has gotten better, and it is easier for some schmo out of Iowa to get into Sundance. I mean, to their credit, but and they show a lot more films than they were at that time. But anyway, there's still always been a niche for Slamdance, and just the kinds of films we take, just for whatever reason, wind up being different, because of our programming is all done by other filmmakers, all done by alumni filmmakers. There's no one person to curry favor with. I'm not on the programming committee anymore, so it's a different vibe, and it's more like sort of training camp for Sundance. And a lot of our filmmakers have then gone on to show their second films at Sundance.
Well, it's weird because I've always considered Slamdance is the punk rock film festival. It's definitely punk rock.
Yeah.
And I've always loved that. I've loved just the vibe. When you see all the movies, there's an attitude. It's all DIY. It's all punk rock. And frankly, it was Slamdance that inspired me to write my book. The Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide. It was because, and I think I talk about this in maybe one of the first edition of the book, it was Kevin DeNovis. I remember meeting Kevin DeNovis, who made a film called Surrender Dorothy, which is a brilliant black and white feature film shot 16 millimeter, in which Kevin actually is in the film.
Yes.
And it's also, there's a big Elizabeth McGovern's in it. Is that right? Is it
Elizabeth Banks?
Elizabeth Banks. And yes Elizabeth Banks.
George,
McGovern. Elizabeth Banks is in it.
And she badmouthed Kevin last year.
She badmouthed him. Well, I mean, it's like...
We came to his defense. So
Exactly.
Roger Ebert liked the film. I mean, he showed it at his first Ebert Fest. So,
Right. So Surrender Dorothy...
Take that thumb up your ass, Elizabeth.
Well, I loved Surrender Dorothy, and I remember meeting Kevin and thinking, this guy's a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
He doesn't know anything.
Right.
And what I mean by that is this. Let me be clear.
In a good way.
Let me be clear. This is a guy that knows a lot about making film. This is a very passionate and talented artist. This is a guy that doesn't know fuck all about promoting himself.
Right.
And believe me, as someone sitting here who knows about promotion, sometimes I wish my content was lived up to the hype that I put out there. And I know yourself to be one of those people that's very resourceful from a marketing standpoint. I always consider you to be one of those guys, like, you get it. Kevin didn't know shit.
No.
I really wrote the book for him, for the filmmakers out there that were extremely talented, but as a person who was capable of promoting themselves and promoting the movie. I mean, I remember asking Kevin point blank, like, hey, do you have a press kit? Like, how do I get in touch with you? He didn't. What's a
press kit?
What's a press kit? Didn't know what that was. Didn't know. So here's a guy who'd made a great movie, and I couldn't contact him after. This is when I was doing Film Threat and writing about film, and it was really disheartening. Like, dude. Like, I want to put his arm around him, and but it would end up being like a 3-4 hour conversation of like, here's some things that you should do. And I said, well, I'm just going to take that 3 or 4 hour conversation that I would say to
stick a cover on it,
transcribe it, call it a book, and then also that there are 15. 25, 35, 100, 1,000 different correct ways of doing it. Yeah. There's no right or wrong. There's many different correct ways. So a lot of the information in the book does contradict itself, but I think that's also true for life. So Kevin DeNovis was really my inspiration, who I met at Slamdance.
Who I saw last night.
Who you saw last night. And also Kevin...
Still one of my closest friends.
Kevin has the distinction of also being a man who can look good in ladies' wear.
Exactly. Which you and I, a little harder to pull off.
Kevin, throw a Slave Leia outfit on me, and believe me, I will be the hairiest Slave Leia. I'm not going to say I'm the best looking. I will definitely be the hairiest Slave Leia. Check my Instagram for that, under that Chris Gore. But he was really the inspiration. And Slamdance was like, it's one of those where it's like, I can go to Sundance and I feel like there's a little bit of hoity-toity. Sundance can be a little hoity-toity. And I feel also with Sundance, in a sense, it's like you don't realize, I feel very naive. Like going to Sundance, it's like, look at all these filmmakers who struggled. They're not all Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith was a guy who did struggle, who put things on credit cards, who sold his comic book collection. Kevin Smith, the real deal, having sold his movie at Sundance. But for the most part, Sundance is trust fund kids. Let's be honest. Let's really be honest. You and I, because I'm like, I would meet filmmakers there. I'm like, dude, like, how did you get the money? My number one question, being an asshole, is the obvious. How did you get it? Because filmmakers and panels would always gloss this over. I really am dying to hear you address this. A filmmaker would come to Sundance and be like, hey, we just got together. We had this idea and so-and-so wrote the script. So then we raised the $1 million and I'd be like,
wait, sir?
Yeah, hello? Yes.
Hello,
we're
you
both
in the
raising,
back, yes?
We're both raising our hands here as if we're in the panel audience. Hello, pick me. How did you get the $1 million? Well, we just pulled it together. How did you get the $1 million? It's the number one question. How did you get the $1 million? How did you get the $1 million for your movie?
They don't even tell you that it's $1 million because everyone is trained to not tell you what their budget is, because
Right.
that's the first thing they teach you in indie film school.
Yeah, don't talk about how much it costs.
Don't talk about
how much it costs. But it was always the question that bothered me that filmmakers would not address, and I sort of forced them. And what you would find out in a lot of cases was. It was really they were just taking their inheritance and writing a check, or they were. What percentage would you say is sort of it's just people who have money?
It's more than you think. It's a lot. It's
80%. Would you say?
Yeah,
It's 80%.
Because you can't make money at this business.
Yes, there is no money in this.
My accountant said it rather bluntly last year. Oh, so it's a hobby.
Yes.
And my wife was like, it is.
Oh,
that's what he's been doing for 20 years. Yeah, you don't say that in front of your wife. So, you can't make money in this business.
Right.
It is a hobby, and that's okay.
Or for some a stepping stone.
Or a stepping stone.
Like with Chris Nolan, his first movie premiered
at Slamdance.
Chris Nolan Following, I think, which is a brilliant movie, very much inspired.
And people forget that. That his wife, Emma, who's his producing partner, was a Slamdance programmer for 2 more years after. So, these guys are definitely embedded into the Slamdance DNA, whether they like it or not.
And I do recall actually being on a panel when Following came out, and Chris Nolan was there, and we got in an argument about, I don't know what it was, screenwriting or something, but it was a very polite argument.
Yeah,
arguments on panels are always
Except when we're on the panel.
Oh,
we
try
to mix things up a bit.
Oh, yes. But, that's something that just a lot of people don't know. It's a rich person writing a check. That's how indie movies get made.
Just talking about self-promotion, he and Emma came to to their first screening at Slamdance, and there were 13 people there.
Really?
Yeah.
Were they disappointed?
They were shocked and stunned. And I said, why are you shocked and stunned? You haven't been passing out flyers or posters. And they're like, hello, what?
You had Chris Nolan, the guy went on to do the Batman films,
Exactly.
The Dark Knight, passing out flyers in
I
Park
had
City.
to school him on passing out flyers because
How did he do?
By their second screening, they had a few more people, like 40 people there. But it was that simple because they thought their producer's rep was doing it. They had just signed on with the distributor, like right before the festival. They thought the distributor was doing something. The distributor wasn't doing anything. No one. I was like, you have to stand up for yourself. You have to get on those streets, in the snow and pass out flyers, talk to people.
And it doesn't change.
Yeah.
It doesn't change.
You can have the best movie at the festival, which arguably it was. You could be Chris Nolan, which arguably he was. In fact, strangely still is. And, a movie is like a tree in the forest. If nobody sees it, it doesn't exist. So you've got to get people in the seats. You've got to get people there. And whether that's social media or a sandwich board, as I've worn, or flyers, whatever it takes. The Russo brothers... the guys they won like 3 Emmys for Arrested Development. They're now shooting Captain America 2, but their first film was at Slamdance. Remember Pieces in '97?
Wait a second, it's interesting. And Brian Singer had a movie that he produced that was at Slamdance.
Exactly.
It's when I look at what's funny, look at all the big superhero movies. They're all people that came.
Alumni.
Well, not Slamdance, or people that came from indie film. John Favreau, whose film was at the Telluride Film Festival. Swingers,
which by the way
was sold before that, though.
Nah, Swingers, which would have premiered at Slamdance. We took the film. It didn't get into Sundance. We took the film in '96. It was in our program. If you look at our program, '96 Swingers is in there, and they didn't finish it in time because this is back when it was film. You had you either finished it or you didn't finish. It's not like video. Oh, we'll output something. So they wound up having a distributor screening 6 weeks later. At the DGA, and they sold it to Harvey Weinstein for $4 million.
And then it premiered at Telluride, and I remember because I sat behind him and Vince Vaughn during the screening. I'm like, these fucking assholes are talking throughout the whole movie. I fucking hate dudes who fucking talk through movies. I can't believe. And then the movie, and I'm just like sitting there. I'm seething as these fucking dudes sitting in front of me are talking through the whole fucking movie, whispering and giggling, and they think it's so fucking funny, and it was funny because Swingers I thought was brilliant. And then the lights come on, and they introduce, and let's bring out the filmmaker Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn, and they get up like right in front. Oh, that's the guys. They're right in front of me.
But the funny thing is, if they had played at Slamdance, they arguably could have won our grand jury prize instead of the guy who did, which was Greg Mottola. He's, of course, doing World War Z now.
It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre how, if you track like some of the biggest blockbusters, because I do think there's a thing about this. When you look at the superhero, Iron Man with Jon Favreau, Bryan Singer, the X-Men films, Chris Nolan, the Batman and Dark Knight films, and now Man of Steel, they came from indie film, and I think there's an indie film mindset that fits well with a Hollywood blockbuster.
Well, part of it, I think, was a smart move. I mean, this is
because it's character-based.
Hollywood. It's character-based, but it's because the executives at Marvel, I forget the one guy there, like he was
Kevin
smart.
Feige?
Yeah. I mean, he said in interviews, like he wanted good filmmakers, Josh Whedon or what I mean.
Joss Whedon, yeah.
Yeah, Joss. Right,
Joss,
right.
There you go.
And maybe not an indie guy, but a great film,
right.
but has that same sensibility. And they realized early on, I think, those are the guys we want making these movies, not necessarily Joel Schumacher with the nipples, So, and to their credit, that's who they've been hiring.
Yeah, I really think that there's a good match between taking some source material that is a long-standing franchise, a comic book superhero movie, matching it with the sensibilities of an indie filmmaker and to me, indie filmmaking is also a lot about creativity in terms of like, this is what we have, these are our resources, still have to make a movie even though it's not what we wanted. I almost feel like money in a way can be can actually tie your hands and lead to not creative choices that don't serve the film. And by that I mean it's like, just do it digital. Just do it digital. Then the movie just looks too freaking digital, and there's a falseness about it. What's cool about indie filmmakers is character is really what you have to work with. What you have to work with is things that are character based. Throw a superhero outfit on it, and that just makes it big, and you can throw on those money shots, those big effects. But it's all about character, and that's where that's indie film's strength. And marry that with a blockbuster, you got a great movie. Yeah. So. So there you go.
Same with the Bond films. It wasn't Greg Mottola who's doing World War Z. It's Mark Forster, who was also at Slamdance. he won the audience prize in '96. Greg Mottola with Day Trippers won the jury prize.
Well, you need to do like
those guys owe both their careers to Jon Favreau.
Well, it's what's interesting. You could do a chart of all the people who came from Slamdance and indie film, and just like how they're married to blockbusters. I really think that it's almost like a farm league for blockbusters is the world of indie film. Well, let's talk about your career in indie. I mean, Omaha indie film.
Yes,
Omaha,
let's talk about me.
Well, there's a couple great stories I would like you to recount to my audience.
Happy to.
I mean, Omaha premiering at Slamdance must have been. First of all, you had to be so proud to having gotten into a film festival.
Yes, I started myself, but
you had to start the film festival to get into it.
Yes, whatever it takes.
But you did get in.
But I did get in, and it did, it did open up the floodgates to getting into other festivals, getting to South by, to getting into Avignon in France and Oldenburg in Germany, and it really did serve that purpose. And actually, the year that we started Slamdance was within a sort of year's radius of South by Southwest starting, LA Independent Festival starting, New York Underground, Chicago Underground festivals.
It exploded. It really exploded.
Hamptons
Slamdance
Festival.
Exploded.
So it was part of kind of the zeitgeist of the democratization of film festivals. But to talk about me, so we did Omaha the movie, played at 32 festivals around the world. Then we did our own self-distribution in the end, which on film prints. We started in Omaha, worked our way out to the country, and wound up playing in 35 cities, including 11 weeks at Lemley's in L.A., with me and a sandwich board standing out, passing out flyers to everyone from Seth Green to Quentin Tarantino, got a flyer of mine. And, and then a few years later, when DVDs were just starting out, we somehow got it stuffed as the free sample DVD on every Pioneer DVD player sold in North America. That was 1/3 units.
Whoa.
Went out. And so people got their first DVD for 1/3 people was my movie. Wow. Whether they wanted it or not, didn't matter. They got it. So I've always liked sort of playing around with new mediums and media and whatever kind of interesting way to get the film out there.
Well, I think one of the best success stories from a marketing and DIY self-promotion standpoint is Open House.
Thank you. Yes.
Open House, I think, well, not only that, first of all, Open House, the description of Open House, give me the log line.
A real estate musical.
It's a real estate musical about, this couple, they go to homes and they have sex in the homes.
They have sex in them. They do
Right.
what
And it's
we
a
call
musical.
sexy swiping, or if you look it up online, house humping.
Is it house humping? Oh my God, I've done it once. I actually have house humped. I was with an ex-girlfriend helping her find an apartment in San Diego, and we went and won. They were just like, oh, the key's under the mat, just go ahead and look at it. And we fucked in the apartment.
Amazing.
It was empty.
No, and I was there filming it the whole time. So that's the characters do that. We had a great cast: Sally Kellerman, Hot Lips from the original MASH, Anthony Rapp, who was in Rent, and Kelly Martin from TV.
It's a great
fun
cast.
People, and super low budget.
And you did this thing that they did in Les Mis. They may in fact have stolen it from you.
Yes.
Where everybody sang on set. It's not like this pre-recorded.
They sang live on set. We had our piano player playing along every take, and exactly. And Les Mis, they were getting all these headlines for it, and it's like, well,
it's been done.
It's been done.
It's been done
8 years before, but we weren't the first to do it either. I mean, it's
Right.
something Altman did on all of his. Like in Nashville, they sing live. The Marx Brothers sang live. I mean, it's been done.
I think
but
the
not
Three
very,
Stooges
but
may have done
often.
it too.
I don't know if that's students, but the Marx Brothers did. But the point is that you get better performances out of it. It's on a low budget. You can, especially on a film like Open House, where the songs are about real estate, they're about the houses that they're in. When you don't know the location that you're going to shoot in, you have to change the lyrics to the song. And you can't do that if you've pre-recorded them.
Right.
So it's like, oh, the brass hinges. Well, what if the hinges aren't brass? So anyway, so that gave us the added flexibility, and it was a lot of fun. And we shot it. It was the first film to be shot on the DVX 100, which for anyone who knows or cares, it was the first kind of digital 24 frames per second camera. And of course, it looks like the first film that was shot on that format. It looks like crap. But we were trying for like kind of a Dogma style musical. It's sort of a musical for people.
And what's great about it is when the DVD came out,
yes,
you sang the commentary.
Yes.
It's a lot of great extras on the DVD.
The first, speaking of Josh Whedon, Joss, yes, thank you.
Close up.
We were the first musical commentary on DVD, and then when he did Dr. Horrible's sing along, they claimed that they were the first musical
not the
commentary.
first.
It was not. We were.
Oh my gosh! So now the great story related to Open.
we haven't
even got to the great story.
No.
Yet. The great story is how you began to orchestrate getting your film Open House nominated for an Oscar. Tell this tale.
Right. So, funny you should say that. So we had played the film at a few festivals, good festivals. It was getting some nice reviews, including from you.
Yes.
Film Threat. And we showed it to distributors, and distributors were like, oh, we like the film. It's nice. Yeah, we don't know what to do with it. And I'm like, we're in the middle of a real estate bubble, and there's a billion people in India who like musicals. How hard could it be? No, nothing. No traction at all. So it's a limbo that a lot of filmmakers find themselves in. I mean, most filmmakers find themselves in this limbo all the time. But it's particularly frustrating. You're in purgatory with your film. So, like all good Hollywood stories, this one starts with me coming out of the proctologist's office one day. And I'm walking funny, and I get a call on my cell phone from my good friend Ariana Baca, who at the time was the acquisitions head at Miramax, I'm like, oh my God, Ariana's calling me. Maybe she wants to pick up the film. And I said, Ariana, do you want the film? She's like, no. Are you kidding me? We're still passing on the film. I said, so why are you calling me? And she says, Dan, have you ever heard about this Oscar category called Best Original Musical? And I said, Best Original Musical? That's crazy talk. I've never heard of such a thing. And she says, no, it's a real category that the Academy has had on the books for a few years. They've just never activated. And I said, what do you mean activated? She says, well, the rules say that in any given year, if there are 5 original musicals, and they have to be truly original. They can't be based on stage shows. They can't have unoriginal music. So Chicago wouldn't have counted. Moulin Rouge wouldn't have counted. But if there are 5 films that meet all the criteria, then they activate the category. 3 of them get nominated. 1 of them wins. I thought, well, that's pretty good odds right there.
You got a 1 in 5 chance of winning an Oscar.
And better than that, a 60% chance of getting a nomination. And if you just get an Oscar nomination, you will get distribution, because who wouldn't want to have Oscar nominee on their DVD box?
Absolutely.
So that was the goal, really, was just to get distribution. So, but the rules were very arcane. You have to have at least 5 songs by the same songwriting team. The songs have to tell the story of the movie. So, in any case, as it turned out, so Miramax thought they had 2 films that were going to be eligible for this category, and they were hoping my film was. My film was complete. We just stumbled into it. It was completely eligible, and so they wanted me as one of the patsies to be one of the 2 films that weren't going to get nominated. But I'm like, I'll be a patsy, sure, why not? This sounds like a fun caper. As it turns out, the 2 Miramax films were not eligible for different obscure reasons. But by this point, we'd started this idea, and we thought, okay, well, let's look for 4 other films now. So this is in 2004. Trey and Matt, again, those guys, had Team America World Police. That had 6 songs. They were eligible. So we got them, we got Paramount to submit the film. Disney had one of their last of their hand-drawn animated musicals, Home on the Range, with music by Alan Menken, who's won like 8 Oscars for, Beauty and the Beast and all these early 90s films, which is one of the reasons this category kind of came about. Anyway, they were eligible. We got them to submit. We got Disney to submit, right? And Neil Young, who I'd worked with a little bit before, he was going to produce one of my other films. He had done an obscure little film called Greendale, which is kind of based on an album, but he had technically recorded it, the film version before the album. Anyway, we got him to submit. So those 4 films, we needed 1 more. So I said, fuck it, let's just make another one ourselves. So, how hard
you're going to make a movie.
We're going to make another movie just so that my other movie could get eligible for an Oscar. But it was tough because I was still on the festival circuit. I was getting ready, and a few weeks later, to go to a festival in Germany, in Oldenburg, Germany. And I'm friends with the festival director there. So, and I teamed up with one of my actors here. We came up with an improvisable storyline. So we thought, let's just shoot it while we're in Germany. We're going there anyway. They're paying for our flights anyway. We were going to be there for 9 days. We had an extra layover in Paris. So we came up with an improvisable storyline about an American who goes to Europe. And we wrote a dozen songs before we went, kind of laid instrumental versions on a CD, brought a little boombox with us, and the actors, again, would sing live. I brought a little camera with me. I was the crew, basically. But we couldn't make it too good because then it would take votes away from open house. We needed our own patsy. So I
didn't know this part of the story.
We had 9 days to make a bad German musical. I mean, it really was a real life version of The Producers. So, I mean, for example, when we get to Germany, we met our actress.
But you're the good guy and the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
In this.
So, the German head of the festival, Torsten. You've met Torsten.
Yes.
He kind of was our German producer. So he got a lot of great actors, a lot of big rock stars, like really some pretty big people in Germany, to be a part of it, and they were all excited. And we meet our German lead actress at the airport, and she says, "Oh, we all love this Oscar idea. We don't quite understand it, but we like it." And she says, "There's only 2 problems." And we said, "What could they be?" And she says, "Well, I can't sing and I can't improvise." And I said, "You're perfect. If you're making a bad German musical, that's exactly who you want." So anyway, we had a lot of fun shooting at all kinds of adventures with pimps and strip clubs and all kinds of crazy
I've
things.
never seen this movie. What is it called?
It's called Half Empty is the final
Half
version.
Empty.
Yeah, originally it was going to be
you had
big
to think
in Germany.
for a second.
Well, because originally it was going to be big in Germany. Anyway, it wound up being called Half Empty. We came back to the States. We slap it together. We needed a version. Didn't have to be a good version. The deadline was 4:55 p.m. on December 1st. We run up the stairs of the Academy, 7 floors, 8 floors, 9 floors, and we realize it's back on the 6th floor. We run down the stairs. I don't know. I suppose we could have taken the elevator, but it wasn't working. I don't know. For some reason, we take the stairs. We slap it on their desk with 2 minutes to spare, and they're like, "Oh, crap. You did it. You bastards. You pulled it off." Because we'd been telling them all along that we were going to do this because they're such sticklers for the rules. And they, were like, "Yeah, right, kid. Sure you are." And they're like, "Oh, man, now we have to take it to the Board of Governors." So 3 days later, they take it to the Board of Governors. It's Tom Hanks. It's, all the studio heads are there.
Didn't they think it's kind of cool? This is kind of a cool thing. There's a good story behind it.
They begrudgingly respected us.
Right,
right. They because they're like, "What kind of idiots would do this?" And I said, "Well, you've never met this kind of idiot, obviously." And so they take it to the Board of Governors. The Board of Governors is like, "What do you mean there's a category called Best Original Musical? That's crazy talk. We've never heard of such a thing." And they were like, "Oh, my God, look at this. Who are we going to give the Oscar to? Trey and Matt, who showed up in dresses, hopped up on, ecstasy or something? The last time they were there? No, we're not going to give those guys an Oscar." Neil Young, who didn't show up the last time he'd been nominated, which was for a song for Philadelphia. Alan Menken, who already has too many Oscars, 8 Oscars. He doesn't need any more. And this Mirvish character, the Slamdance punk, his 2 films put together, their combined budgets don't add up to the cost of an Oscar gift basket. There's no way in hell we're going to give that guy
Aren't those
an Oscar.
worth like 30 grand, 50 grand, 60 grand?
So they canceled the category.
They just decided.
They
not
just
to do it.
decided not to do the category that year.
They decided not to follow their own rules.
Not to follow their own rules. These people who are such sticklers for the rules said, never mind.
What was the fallout in the media about this?
Well, that was so you know me. I'm no slouch when it comes to shameless self-promotion.
I do see you in Variety.
You do, yes. You're the one who reads Variety. And so Reuters picked up the story. It ran literally around the world because, Oscar, no matter how you spell it, people know it. LA Times, Variety, Hollywood Reporter. We got quite a bit of press. We were actually, for a while, we were still eligible for Best Song. So, but now everyone in the music branch knew who we were. So we were actually one of the top contenders for Best Song for Open House, a song that Sally Kellerman sang. In the end, we didn't get that, but we were one of the contenders. We were sort of on the short list for that. Anyway, but the point is that because of all the press that we got, we wound up getting distribution for the film from a company that wound up being bought out ultimately by the Weinsteins.
Wow.
And of course,
so it's a happy ending.
It is a happy ending because, of course, on the back of the DVD box it says from the film that changed the rules of the Academy Awards.
So you could.
So we mentioned the Academy Awards and Oscars like 4 times on the video box.
Oh my God! I would love to see a documentary about the year that this happened. This is basically the musical that never that never happened.
Exactly. You actually can see that documentary if you go online to the YouTube. You can look up how to win an Academy Award or how to win an Oscar award.
You made a documentary?
Yeah, it's a short. It's like a 15-minute documentary. It's
the extra that's on the
DVD extra.
Right.
It's been updated a little bit.
How to win an Academy Award.
Yeah, or how to win an Oscar award, and you'll see it
on YouTube. Oh my God!
YouTube, yeah,
dude, that's amazing.
So, if I was smart, I would have submitted that for Best Short Documentary the next year. Anyway, so there is some chatter about turning that whole story into either a movie or a play. I think it would be a fun play because then wouldn't it be a kick to win a Tony out of not winning an Oscar?
Oh my God! And then eventually they can make the movie of the play.
Yes.
Oh my!
And then finally win the Oscar.
It's a great. I saw all of that unfold, and I remember writing about it like as it was going. I remember feeling your pain when I would get the updates.
Yeah.
But it's such an amazing story, and then ending with having the rug pulled out from under you, literally the red carpet pulled out from under you. Yeah. At the end is just it is a great underdog DIY story. Even though the result is not exactly what you wanted, you did get distribution for the movie.
Right, which was the point. And then the Weinsteins were, to their credit, they were like, oh, okay, we own this musical. Maybe we should turn it into a stage play. So turning Open House into a stage play. So there was chatter about that. That took me out to some Broadway meetings. Meanwhile, the DVD did well. It had a nice little following.
I believe I gave it a buy on DVD's Day on Attack of the Show.
Thank you very much. And anyway, so I started having these meetings with Broadway people, anyone I could find on Broadway with jazz hands, which is quite a lot of people out there, if you know what I mean. And but while I was there, I said, well, look, as long as I'm here having interesting Broadway meetings, do any of you guys have any plays, not necessarily musicals, but plays that would make good film adaptations? And I said, yeah, no one ever asked for these. Here's stacks and stacks of plays.
Whoa.
And so that was when I discovered Between Us, which had been an off-Broadway play at Manhattan Theater Club, very successful and gotten good reviews. By the way, out of the 30 plays I read, most of them I did not like. 2 that I liked were Between Us. The other one was a little play called Farragut North, which is a political thriller about a young campaign worker in Iowa, which I could relate to. My background was, before I got into film, I was a speechwriter for an Iowa senator. I worked on campaigns. I liked it, but ultimately thought it'd be too hard to make it a low budget as opposed to Between Us, which is 4 people in 2 rooms. How hard could that be?
Right.
I passed on Farragut North. Of course, George Clooney made it, turned into Ides of March. So he got a happy ending for my sloppy seconds on that one.
That's hilarious. First of all, let me just say, having watched Between Us, thank you for sending me the screener of it.
No, thank you for watching
it. It didn't feel like a play. I would not have guessed that. As weird as it's extremely cinematic in terms of your approach and even the opening title sequence, the beautiful scenery,
aerial footage that Dana Altman shot.
Oh my God, it looks amazing. So and great cast too.
Thank you.
Julia Stiles.
Tay
Lumen
Diggs.
from Dexter.
Yes, from
for
Dexter, for those.
Tay Diggs,
Tay Diggs.
Yeah.
We all got our groove back with him. Melissa George, who many people know from Alias, from Teresa's 30 Days of Night. She was just on Hunted, was this BBC show.
And the guy, I forget his name.
And David Harbour.
I was going to say the bad guy from Green Hornet. But also, he also has a name.
Quantum of Solace, yes. He also has a name.
Right.
David Harbour, he's a Tony nominee. He was in the original play. He originated that role, 8 years ago or something. So that was kind of why and how he came to it. He's on Newsroom right now.
We came here tonight to apologize.
Yeah.
We behaved.
Horribly.
Yeah, you did. We never planned for that to happen.
Look,
really, please let me finish. We didn't want or plan for it to go the way it did that night, really.
Stop. You guys are our oldest
We're
friends.
just really sorry. We're really sorry.
It does sort of demonstrate what is great about indie film, which is, you're meeting these characters, you're seeing these beautiful scenery, they're getting into it, they're drinking wine, they're hanging out, they're drinking milkshakes. There's a moment early in the film where everything, just the drama gets sort of sucked. Where there's this moment where we have to apologize. We really, really have this apology that ends up being a thread throughout the movie is just, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. What are they talking about? This is.
Well, part of it was the way we did the adaptation, and I wrote the adaptation with the playwright Joe Hortua, and we worked very closely on that. And he's a co-producer on the film. But kind of my idea was in the original play, the whole first act was set in the Midwestern house. The whole second act was set 2 years later in this New York apartment. And we should tell people, the characters, the two guys are photographers. One's David Harbour character is a successful advertising photographer in the Midwest, and his old grad school buddy Tay's character is a New York art photographer, basically. So we see them, at the Midwestern house first, and then we see them 2 years later in the New York apartment, and it turns out that the New York couple is not doing so well. But in the play, the whole first act was set in the Midwestern house. The whole second act was set in the New York apartment 2 years later. Because on a play you can do that. But what I wanted to do, and Joe liked this idea, was to kind of interweave those two acts together. So we flash forward, we flash back. Because when you first say that you're going to adapt a play, the first thing people say is, how are you going to open it up? When really what they should be saying is, how are you going to make it more cinematic? And you do that through space.
Just locations,
right. Yeah, you have more locations. But also in time. You can edit and go back and forth in time in film in a way that you can't easily do on stage.
Right.
And certainly this play hadn't done,
right.
It just hadn't occurred to him. So that was kind of my approach to directing it and in working on the adaptation with Joe.
Well, it looks beautiful.
Thank you.
It's amazing. And then what's the plan? It's opening up what?
It's opening up. Funny you should ask.
I'm setting up to plug it. I'm setting up to plug it.
The film is opening. The film Between Us is opening June 21st in theaters nationwide, or at least in LA.
Only in theaters, but not in 3D or IMAX. Between Us.
No, exactly. If you
can use that audio. Feel free.
No, I like that.
So it's not 3D, thank God.
It's not 3D, thank God. No, not unless you've got a twitch in one eye. So so it's opening up June 21st.
Awesome.
And in LA, that's at the Downtown Independent Theater. It's also going to be on LodgeNet, which is every hotel room where you normally watch porn. If you get confused and hit the wrong button, you can watch our movie.
I'm often confused and I'm selecting porn.
No, of course. But it's going to be in other theaters around the country as well. So.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the subject that comes up at almost every indie film panel is, what's the future of indie film? I feel like this is the topic that always, because I have I got at this last recent Slamdance that I was at. I went to a Slamdance party. Kind of got into. I don't know that it was a fight. It was a spirited debate about indie film, how it's changed, how it's evolved. You have a lot of thoughts about this, and I had suggested to an indie filmmaker who was seeking some way to release their movie. I just looked at him and said, you could just cut it up in 2 or 3 minute bits, and you'd almost be better off releasing an app of your movie than you would releasing the movie, especially if it's been rejected for distribution.
Well, I always.
What's your response to that?
I always tell filmmakers, I think that's a great idea, because I think that filmmakers, a lot of times, especially when they're doing their first film, they get hung up on this idea of the 90-minute feature that plays in 30 art houses around the country. And they get hung up on the medium and the form of that. And having been through the mill a few times, I think I've moved on. I mean, even though this one is exactly that, along the way I've done other, shorts and other things and, transmedia projects. And I think the trick is to come up with your character or your style or your voice or whatever it is, and don't worry about the medium. If it works as a web series, great. If it works as a TV pilot, perfect. If it works as a book or a play, go with it. Like my Eisenstadt project. Funny you should ask about that.
Right. I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. So, this was something that, with Between Us,
that character became like a series of videos.
Exactly. Yeah.
In addition, a book. So it's like, could there be a movie of it? Yes.
Well, it started that way. It started. This is a project I worked on with another Slamdance filmmaker. We still have.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You
can never get me to stop talking.
No. Are you kidding? That's what we're doing.
So. This is, I thought I was going to make Between Us in like 2007, 2008 for $2 or $3 million. It was when Squid and the Whale was big,
right.
and we were getting a great cast. So like getting a cast was always easy with this because there's such great parts. But the economy fell through in 2008, and it was just like,
don't I know it?
Yes, exactly. And so there's no way you can get any feature made at any budget level. But luckily, there had been another little side project I was doing literally in my garage with another filmmaker named Gore, another Slamdance guy, where we had created this character named Marty Eisenstadt, who was a pundit, a Washington-based pundit. And originally it started as a spec car commercial that evolved into a short film. Then we went to the HBO Comedy Arts Festival. We told people it was a short pilot. Oh, a short pilot. Okay, you must have TV meetings. They're doing TV meetings. But we actually had our most success when we sort of were incubating the character online. We created a blog for him. And what he was a Washington-based pundit.
You pulled off some hoaxes.
Yes. Well, if that's the term you choose, yes.
I would like to say hoax.
You would like to say.
He's a fake. Because I kind of feel like when I even watch like the news, whether it's like Bill Maher's show on HBO or Jon Stewart's show or whatnot, I feel like, or MSNBC, whatever, Fox, it's like if you've got pretty much a P.O. box and you can say you're the Mirvish group,
yeah,
or whatever
that's exactly
it is.
what it was.
He
was Marty Eisenstadt, president of the Eisenstadt Group.
Yeah, you're a Democratic strategist. You're head of the Mirvish Group.
Exactly.
It's all bullshit. And this is what, like, I just as someone who I consider myself media savvy in the sense that I just don't trust the media at all.
Yeah.
And any level, I don't trust MSNBC. I trust MSNBC. I distrust Fox. I distrust all of them because I just know it's agendized. It's agendized content. All of it.
Well, we started with a series of fake Giuliani ads, which which were ultimately blamed for some strange reason on the consulting company that had done the Swiftboat ads. So naturally, they denied it, which they would,
Right, exactly.
So the Obama campaign denied their involvement. The Romney campaign denied involvement. The King campaign denied involvement. And anyway, so that kind of evolved into the Eisenstadt character. So we said Eisenstadt was, at the height of the general election campaign, we said he was a McCain advisor. He was a senior fellow at the Harding Institute for Freedom and Democracy, named after the second worst president in U.S. history, Warren Harding. And
all of this is what's funny is it looked so legit. It looked so legit that there's no way that you would. I mean, this guy was like a Drudge Report type guy.
Yeah, we had websites, we had blogs, we had videos. We had a video of him being interviewed on Iraqi television lobbying for casinos in the Green Zone, because what happens in the Green Zone stays in the Green Zone.
Wait a sec. So you faked footage that he was interviewed in the Green Zone in Iraq?
Yeah. Again, we shot in my garage. I mean, because it looks...
Green screen?
Yeah. But it was supposed to look like a third-rate Iraqi cable show.
Oh, my
God. So it doesn't take much to make my garage look like a third-rate Iraqi cable show. And sure enough, like, Iraqi bloggers thought this guy was real. So a lot of people thought he was real. And then there were other people that got the joke right away. They got that it was satire.
I got the joke. It was just very real. It was like, this is a lot of effort.
It was, yeah. We wound up shooting because mostly we were pitching this as a TV show, single cam comedy about a guy in Washington. Easy pitch. But then, in the world of TV pitches, as you know, you need to have something visual to show.
Right.
So we were coming up with. That's why we were kind of doing this stuff. But. So eventually we shot a full half-hour pilot, which, again, we broke up into 2 or 3 minute segments, put on YouTube, said it was a BBC documentary that had been rejected by the BBC, called The Last Republican, with a big, buxom British woman following him around, but it was me shooting it,
Oh, my God.
And Eitan played the character. Our friend Oren played his assistant. And
you should, you could contact the Blaze Network. Glenn Beck, I'm sure he's looking for programming.
I'm sure,
I know he's looking for programming.
Anyway, so it all kind of came to a head with Sarah Palin. There was the rumor that she thought Africa was a country instead of a continent.
Right.
which is true. She really did say that, but it was attributed, it was a leak from a disgruntled McCain advisor, again, which was true, but it was an anonymous leak to Fox News. So our character took credit for that leak because we knew that the anonymous leaker wasn't going to out himself by saying that Eisenstadt wasn't the guy. 3 hours later, MSNBC has breaking news, bump, up, up, Marty Eisenstadt is the source of the Palin Africa story, and they had 2 dial-up pundits on the air talking about him as if they all think he's real.
This alone should show you how lazy the media is.
Yeah.
And even like,
Because if they had Googled him for 30 seconds, they would have seen, like the third
That it's
Google
fake.
entry was hoax, hoax, hoax. Because we had a tranny-loving Brazilian golf blogger who was out to out us the whole time. Never figured out who we were, but knew that Marty was fake and would always kind of rat us out to people. So by that point in the election, if people didn't figure out he was fake, it was their own damn fault.
well, this is what I know.
David Schuster eventually got fired.
If the producers at MSNBC had for a moment just done that and vetted the story,
The Google search.
Search, yes, then they would have known. It irritates me just because just having been involved in entertainment media, in a previous life career with Film Threat et al., whatever stuff that I've done. You get press releases and you see how lazy the media is, because I would get a press release and then I would see the regurgitated contents of that press release on all sorts of legitimate news sites. It's like, wait a second, it looks as if this publicist wrote that story. That's how lazy. And I'm thinking, like, if I find all these errors and bullshit and manipulation in something as innocuous and not particularly important as entertainment news, it just boggles the mind what kind of news we're being fed when it comes to real news.
Oh, yeah. No, exactly. I mean, we had the Times of India. Every newspaper in India reported that Marty Eisenstadt was apologizing to the country of India for apparently insulting them on YouTube. As a McCain advisor, So
this is brilliant. This is one of the. I mean, I love it. It's like an art project.
Yeah, it really was, And so then 3 days later, we outed ourselves to the New York Times. They ran a half-page profile on us, and the front page of the art section was the most emailed story that week. AP picked it up and ran all over the world because the Palin story was everywhere. CNN put it on because they could make fun of MSNBC, so we were all over CNN. And the next day, we got a book offer from Farrar Straus Giroux, who I thought was fake. I wasn't willing to believe anything. And turns out they're one of the most prestigious publishers. Jonathan Franzen's book, Thomas Friesen's book. Anyway, so when presented with the option, do you keep not getting paid to not direct a movie, or do you get paid to write a book? One's wife tells you to write the book.
Yes.
So we wrote the book, which is called I Am Martin Eisenstadt, One Man's Wildly Inappropriate Adventures with the Last Republicans. And, we had a lot of fun writing it, completely hands-off. Eitan and I wrote this thing in like 4 months. Came out, got amazing reviews, much better than any film I'd ever made. Amazing reviews. It was one of the top 3 books of the year, according to Washington Monthly. It sold well. We had an amazing book tour back in D.C.
I was at one of your book signings.
That's right, you were.
At Book Soup. It was great.
In D.C., Bill Clinton's old press secretary threw a party at his house. All the real pundits were there. We were running into congressmen and senators, and the book tour was, dominatrixes was stranger than the book itself. We could write a whole book about that.
Wait,
anyway,
what?
Dominatrixes, senators, congressmen's wives hitting on us at 3 a.m.
Let's save that for another podcast. Save it for another podcast.
But the point is that then we went back to pitching it as a TV show, and actually Ashton Kutcher was going to produce it. Showtime was going to do it, and then the deal fell through because some executive got fired or something. So, but we came pretty close, For us, we came pretty close for a couple of, numbskulls working out of a garage. Anyway, the bottom line was that finally it had run its course, and we said, okay, why don't we go back to making Between Us, but this time at a much lower, micro budget, like I actually know how to do. So we started raising money, Kickstarter, Facebook, just friends and family. And then, we were able to get this amazing cast because we went back to the same agents and managers who we had approached 2 years before when it was a bigger budget, and said, well, the budget's changed, but the parts are the same. We're still going to shoot it on a fancy camera. Do you want in or not? And you said, the trick is to have iron balls and just say, we've got a start date, and we're shooting in 3 weeks. And we got Julia Stiles because she was supposed to be in a Neil LaBute play on Broadway. And, all of a sudden after rehearsing, their financing fell through. 2 hours later, our agents calls me up and said, I've got nothing for Julia for the next 6 months. You know, do you want her for your movie? And I was like, yeah, of course. Sends her the script. 24 hours later, she was in. You know, so the trick is to find actors at their most vulnerable, emotional moments and kind of swoop in. And
well, it's a brilliant film, and anyone that sees it,
Can I put that on the poster?
Please, it's a brilliant film.
It's a brilliant film.
Spurs conversation.
Yes.
It gave me a brainer.
Good.
You could put
Is that a good thing?
A brainer. Yes, it gave me a brainer.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but so congratulations on that film opening. Let's before we get into this week's PodCRASH, this week's crash.
Yes.
I want to ask you about future of indie film. This is
sorry.
you've been around really
We've been
like
talking about me.
Well, both of us have been around. You know, kind of
a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks.
Yeah,
but we've been around indie film for a while, the two of us,
Yeah.
and I've seen things evolve, seen things work and not work. I say that statistically, I think that there are fewer good indie films than studio movies. I know it sounds like blasphemous to say, but when you screened as many as I have, and then you see, but I feel like, you know, studio films have less of an excuse to fail because they have so many resources.
Exactly.
When you see an indie movie do well, you really want to support it.
Right.
But that argument that I got into, suggesting that the filmmaker actually just like with your Barty Eisenstadt project, it's like you don't know what it is. It could be a movie. It could be a TV show. It could be a web series. It could be a book.
You can't get hung up on that.
What is the thing?
So it's called the transmedia project, which I thought was just wearing dresses outside, but it turns out there's actually a bit more to it.
Yeah, transmedia projects are being more widely accepted.
Yes.
More and more.
Yes.
More and more they are.
So, but yeah, and I think that you just have to approach it that way. But I don't know. I mean, I just wrote a fancy blog on Huffington Post and IndieWire about Kickstarter. And you know, what
do you think of that whole situation with Zach Braff? What do you think of the whole situation with Zach Braff, Dan Mirvish? What do you think?
Funny you should say that, Chris. So
I have an opinion on this as well.
People have been missing the big picture. The big picture with the Veronica Braff thing, which, by the way, that's my next.
Is that what they're calling it, Veronica Braff?
That's what I'm calling it. Veronica Braff is my name. Yeah.
Verbraff?
Yeah, V-Braff. Yeah.
V-Braff. Okay.
Is the big picture...
And let's explain what this is before...
Explain what it is.
Well, it's Zach, well, the Veronica Mars, they want to make the Veronica Mars movie.
A few weeks later, Veronica,
they're going to make the Veronica Mars movie, and there's all these projects on Kickstarter, Kickstarter.com, also Indiegogo.com, where you can seek out indie filmmakers looking to get a couple of bucks to make their movies. Warner Brothers owns Veronica Mars. They thought, well, if enough people want to see this, and they raised how much money? It was
$2 million.
$2 million, like in a short period of time. And then Zach Braff
did the same thing for his next.
Did the same thing for, I think the film is called I Wish I Was Here, which is not a sequel to his
Garden State.
Garden State. It's not a sequel, but is in the spirit of. Right. So similar cast, you know, himself in it, and it's and this is a guy that, you know, he does get. I think when he was doing Scrubs, he was getting paid what, $300,000 an episode.
Yeah,
he was getting paid. He was getting paid like 30 of your movies an episode in terms of budget. Right. So there, I can see how there might be some disdain and jealousy from people outside looking at fucking Zach Braff. Blah, blah. But honestly, for me, I don't give a shit. I think that I applaud him.
If people want to give him money, let him give him money. No one's forcing
No one is forcing anyone else to give Zach Braff money. I think the Garden State, solid indie movie.
Yeah.
You know, enjoyable, great soundtrack, Garden State. Right. So this disdain for Zach Braff, and also I didn't give him any money. Okay, so I didn't give him money. It's like, you know what? I'll wait and see. I will see the movie when it comes out. I'm curious to see it. I think Zach Braff is. I like Zach Braff as a person and as an actor. He's a talent.
As talented as filmmaker as anyone. You know,
He doesn't need my money, which is why I did not give it to him. I'm also happen to be living on unemployment and doing a podcast. So let's be honest here. I'm not. They're not extravagances, you know, in my life at the moment.
But my point is the big picture. The big picture is not. I don't really care about Zach Braff or not. I didn't even watch his appeal. I'm like, good for him, great, terrific. The big picture is that what it has done is it's put Kickstarter on the map, and it's put the concept of crowdfunding more on the map. People are actually talking about it. It's in the New York Times. It's in it's on NPR. You know, what that's done is I think it's fundamentally changed a 100-year-old paradigm of how we raise money for films. For 100 years, people have raised money for films by finding investors. And you find investors and you tell them, you know, with a straight face, you try to tell them that they will make their money back on your film. And then very quietly in very small letters, the SEC requires you to say, by the way, you will not make money on your film.
Right.
But...
Really, it's what is it? I heard the statistic. The statistic is that a movie that plays Sundance, like it's 7 years after Sundance, only 20% of the movies that played Sundance actually have distribution. And then secondly, it's like it takes, I think the average for a movie to pay out, it's like 5 years, 7 years, if it even gets distribution, if it even pays out.
Yeah. So anyway, so the point is that for
So-
100 years we've been lying to ourselves and to investors and saying,
It's art
give us money.
welfare. It's
exactly.
basically indie film.
But that's what it should
is
be.
Art welfare.
But my point is that with the concept of crowdfunding, all of a sudden the semantics have changed. You no longer invest in a film, you donate to a film. You are a backer to a film, which is now the same way that we treat opera and symphony and community theater and public radio. Oh, I will donate to NPR and get a tote bag. Great. Everyone gets that. Now, all of a sudden, film is treated in the same way. Now, you don't have to lie to your investors. You can tell them the truth. Yeah, you can give me $100 or $1,000 or $5,000, and it is a donation. Thank you very much. Here's your tote bag. And
You can give them a T-shirt for $5,000.
Exactly, and it's more honest for the filmmaker. It's more honest for the financier. Like, they know what they're getting now. They know why they're doing it, and they won't kneecap you when you don't pay them back. So I think that is the big picture. That has what has fundamentally changed about the Veronica Braff thing, and that is good for people.
I think that is the future of indie film, and I think that just when someone says they want to make an indie movie, I think, but what is it? Is it it can be, as you said, transmedia. It can evolve. It doesn't have to be a 90-minute movie that opens in a theater. And in a way, the indie film theaters / art houses have kind of died off in the way that drive-ins died off in the 70s.
Well,
70s and 80s, they kind
but the
of
ones that are left have evolved into these kind of community theater spaces, which is more like a community theater model.
Well,
they're nonprofit. The ones that are doing well are the nonprofits,
right?
And they have fancy drinks, and and they're not just, you don't necessarily play for a week. You can just play for a night. And now with satellite distribution, and that is actually something that's happening with Between Us. It's the distributor, which is Monterey Media, is putting the movie out available on satellite. So they said point blank, they said, look, there's a lot of theaters that aren't going to play this movie for a week. Some indie theater in Tulsa or whatever that normally plays a King's Speech. They'll play the Miramax film. They're not going to play your film for a week. Who are we kidding? But they may play it on a Tuesday night, and satellite it in. And because they do that now with operas and symphonies.
You don't even send out a print. You don't even send out you satellite it in.
You satellite it in or whatever,
Wow. So you're streaming.
Okay.
Wait a second. Just to be clear, you're streaming your movie at a movie theater, effectively.
Yeah, something like
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Exactly. So some theaters are going to have week-long runs, but some may just be a night. But I'd rather have 100 people in Tulsa see the movie on one night than no one in Tulsa see the movie and have it in a theater experience. I
like the way that Morgan Spurlock has been releasing his movies, where he's got that deal with it's Magnolia, right? Where
okay.
I think it's where he'll do his documentary and it premieres in some theaters.
Right.
Then it's also available on DVD.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it's also available, pay-per-view all the same day.
Yeah.
They kind of drive all the marketing day and date.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. In our particular case, I don't know. I know the hotel thing is happening day in, day out. I don't know when VOD and DVD and PCP are all happening. That's whenever. But, but again, I'm not in charge of it. But someone is, hopefully. So.
Well, I think that we've answered the question. The future of indie film is it's not necessarily a movie. And secondly, it can be financed.
And it's not necessarily indie. So the future of indie film is neither indie nor film.
Yeah. Well, there has been some there's definitely, you see merging. We see, for example, a lot of studio movies kind of borrowing from the world of indie film, and whether it be marketing and promotional ideas and whatnot. And I feel like that's that's a level of creativity that goes even beyond the movie. In terms of just promotion.
Right.
So you've been great at that.
Yes. Well, the social media, and speaking of which, you can follow me at.
Well, I was going to say, let's, because we're going to get to this.
You can
this
follow me at Dan Mirvish, DanMirvish, and I would say you could friend me on Facebook, but I just hit my 5,000th.
You did?
Friend. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know what to do now. You need to tell me.
I have a fan page,
right?
And I have that is run by me, and then but it's only specifically for people I really don't know.
Yeah.
But you can just subscribe to that's the whole thing is you don't need to be a friend. It's just subscribe to your channel.
Yeah.
It's really sort of dumb. The whole.
I do. Yeah, because there are. But I don't even know where my subscribe button is. I think they've changed where.
Have they changed where it is?
Yeah.
Whenever they make changes on Facebook, it ends up in a Facebook group that is upset about the change.
Yes, of course.
Which I invariably join anyways because I just don't want to have someone ask me why I didn't.
Right.
which is another communication I don't need to have on
Yeah,
Facebook,
yeah.
which is most of the communication
Right.
on Facebook.
Right.
It's I like it to find out what's going on. I'll look at the kids' pictures, on there. I'll look at family stuff.
Don't say that out loud.
Right, don't say that.
You're looking at-
Yeah, I know. I'll look at pictures of children on
yes.
Facebook.
Right, yeah.
No, just pictures of
Scantily
my
clad
friends' kids,
children.
or just
You're the one. That's,
yeah, exactly.
This is why you're blocked.
Yeah, no, I catch up with my friends, and then I'm promoting my shit. That's
Right.
why I'm on
That's-
Facebook.
Me too.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, a third of the people who contributed to my Kickstarter campaign. And by the way, Kickstarter, it's called Kickstarter, not Kick Finisher. I mean, we raised our first $10,000 on Kickstarter. We didn't raise our last $10,000.
Yeah, right.
It was good for getting momentum and things like that. But and this was when $10,000 really meant something on
Wow.
Kickstarter, not $2 million.
And this is like
this is 3 years ago or something.
And when this is interesting, Indiegogo I use, Indiegogo.com I use to get funding for Fetishville,
Right.
which is going to be coming out later
A
this
wonderful
summer.
thing. You should all. It's brilliant.
It's a web
says
series.
Dan Mirvish.
Fetishville is a web series about a group of dominatrixes that service the rich, powerful, and famous.
Yes, and they're
possibly
dolls.
investors, and it's all done dolls with a guy who's an animator at Robot Chicken, and I
Mm-hmm.
wrote it. It's performed by a bunch of female actresses. Anyways, it's coming later this summer, and I did my campaign on Indiegogo. I got less than half of what I was trying to get.
Right. But with Indiegogo, you can still take.
I can still take. So I'm like, you know what? I'll start it. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to go on to Kickstarter to get the rest of the funding.
Yeah.
The first episode's going to come out as a teaser along with an app that you'll be able to download for free. Speaking of apps, there's a PodCRASH app.
Funny you should say that. There's a PodCRASH app.
There is a PodCRASH
Really?
app that's for Android and should be by now available on the iPhone and for iPad. It sort of aggregates all the
And
stuff
speaking
related
of
to
the
PodCRASH.
iPhone, you can get the trailer for Between Us just dropped on iTunes. You can watch the trailer for Between Us.
The trailer for Between Us on iTunes. Watch it, see it. It's not an IMAX. I think that's going to be my next career. Is going to be just doing those sort of
Someone's gotta be the
only
dude
in
down
theaters,
there.
rated PG-13. I can do that.
You can do that, yeah.
I can do that. So I have used. I'm familiar with a lot of this. I think that is definitely the future, and it's also you should take what the universe is saying. For example, if
What is
you
the universe saying?
what I mean by that is if the universe is saying if you get less than half, I really think you got because I really did for a second think I got a little less than half. Should I do this? And I'm thinking, well. I'm going to move forward with doing a technology test and do this other stuff. And it actually changed. The project changed quite a bit because there were some legal issues with regard to doll parts. It's weird. You have no idea when you have to investigate this stuff because I want to make sure that everything's legally vetted so I can actually sell this,
Right.
say if an HBO or someone else want to come in to
'cause
pick up the
what
series.
was the famous Barbie movie that
Yes,
no one
that's
ever-
never
that-
been
that's
released.
Never been released.
Yeah.
What's his name did?
Todd Haynes.
Todd
It's
Haynes.
the Karen Carpenter
Karen
story,
Carpenter, right.
which is he used Barbies, but the reason that it's
the
not
Carpenter
a
songs,
it's
right?
it's the songs from the Carpenters.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant biopic, but made using Barbie dolls. It's actually misnomer. It's not animated. It's actually just this sort of
right.
they just sort of hold them as puppets.
Right.
But it's great. And
But
I
20
didn't-
years later, we're still talking about it.
we're still talking about that movie. Well, it was his thesis film for he went to NYU, and brilliant. It was a cover story, filmed throughout way back when it was
back when there were covers.
back when it was in print, which is just like the internet on really thin slices of wood.
Yes,
it's
yes,
just remember that magazine. Remember that, folks? Yeah. So Fetishville will be coming out. So I've used it. I'm very familiar with it. And I thought about should it be a movie, and it's like no, this is just it's going to be an app,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a web series. And it's going to
Exactly.
be a web series that there'll be the censored version and the uncensored version. There's different layers to it. So.
And I think that I mean
It's transmedia.
You've really
I can use that
embraced
term now.
Transmedia, and I say that because you're wearing a dress as we speak. But
Yes.
you
Yes,
look lovely
I-
in it, by the way.
yes,
Red
I
really
am.
brings out your eyes.
well, thank you so much.
But and that's the thing is you can't get hung up on it. But I think part of it is because we've made films. I mean,
Right.
you've done it.
Right.
We've been there. We've done it, and I think
Unsuccessfully.
yeah, it's successfully unsuccessful. Right.
Some success, some
The
unsuccess,
point
whatever.
is, but I think a lot of people that come into it. But on the other hand, there's a lot of high school kids, junior high kids, that are doing stuff on YouTube. They don't even think of themselves as filmmakers. They think of content creators. They think of themselves as YouTubers.
Right.
And I think that's something that the film business is very aloof about. And film festivals are very aloof about. They don't reach out to these kids.
It really has made. It's really a choice if you're a filmmaker and you've made a short property. You've made, in fact, I was watching Ari Gold, one of my favorite indie filmmakers, not Ari Gold, the character from Entourage. I'm talking about real Ari Gold, the filmmaker who made a brilliant 1-minute short film that would get standing ovations and eruptions of applause at Sundance when it played before movies. It was 1 minute long. You can see it on YouTube. It's called Culture. 1 minute. Look up Culture, Ari Gold. It's a brilliant one. Now, if he had made Culture today, and he shot it in 16 millimeter and it played before movies, this is like in the late 90s, right? Played before the main feature. So if he had made that film today, he really has a choice. Do I put it on YouTube or I enter it into a festival? And the immediate gratification is going to say, and especially the way that we think about things now, I'm just going to put it on YouTube. Right. Why would I enter it into a film festival? And you've seen kind of, I won't say that festivals are going away. They're not. I mean, they're
proliferating, if anything.
The smaller ones, there's been a shakeout. Let's be honest. I mean, Cinevegas, a well-funded film festival, went away, and Trevor Groth was
well,
the
I
head
think
of
in
that.
2008 there was this shakeout. And
definitely was a shakeout.
Yeah. But now they're coming back, and we don't have to talk about film festivals because
that's a whole other podcast.
That is a whole.
Why don't I can have you back? I can have you back for another episode.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I have another example like that too. I did. It's a long story of why I made it, but I did a little short film called "The Few and the Proud." It's your son should.
You should check that out.
It is a Marine recruiting documentary, or not a documentary, the Marine recruiting spoof. Right? Again, shot in my garage, and I made it because it's.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah. So eventually,
Fantastic.
So we played it at just a couple festivals, mainly just to get IMDb credits for the actors because it's nice for them, and they were friends of mine. And then eventually we found a way. Like after 2 years, I had gotten an offer from like Adam Films to buy it for $500 for all rights in perpetuity, and I was like, "Thank you, but no, thank you." Right. So I kind of sat on it for a few years. Finally, when we did the Eisenstadt project, released it as part of the Harding Institute YouTube channel, as if it had been produced by the Harding Institute, commissioned by the Defense Department, classified because it was so offensive, and it had just been declassified. Anyway, and
did people believe it?
So so some people believe it. I mean, but it's pretty silly. And very offensive. But the best part about it, it's had now 330,000 hits on YouTube.
Whoa.
Which is, I mean, it's not millions and millions, but it's probably more people have seen that than any other piece of film I've ever made.
Wow.
Put together.
Wow.
And the interesting thing though is not just the numbers, but the way it gets them. If you do a search for Marine recruiting, it is the #1 video that shows up on Google.
Wow.
I just got lucky. It just worked with the tag.
And it's a spoof.
And so every day, 400 people watch it, and I don't have to pimp it at all. But the real interesting thing are the comments, because they're all active duty Marines, Marine recruiters, people, kids in Afghanistan and Iraq.
I'm so looking this up. What's the name?
And The Few and the Proud.
Okay.
And they love it, they love it, they hate it. The Army guys are offended by it. People are offended. Is it real? Is it not real? You dumb schmuck, whatever. The comments are hysterical. And what I tell other filmmakers, and I'll tell your audience because I'm on your podcast, is that it's a perfect example of finding the right medium for the right film at the right time. So if that film had played at Sundance, if I'd even submitted it to Sundance, 200 old people in Harvey Weinstein might have seen it and given it a nice little polite applause. Mm-hmm. But now it's actually getting seen by the right audience that really appreciates it and gets it and likes it for what it is. And if it distracts them from sitting, in Afghanistan in the mud or the desert, good. As a filmmaker, as an artist, whatever, I'm happy. It's reaching the audience it should be reaching in the way that they watch media.
Well, this has been a great conversation, but I don't want to say goodbye. Let's continue this conversation after this week's crash. So, Dan, I want you to stick around through all of this. No, we're not. No, I'm not thanking you.
Okay.
We're going to do this later, but people can follow you at Dan Mirvish.
At Dan Mirvish. That's probably the easiest way. Now,
is there danmirvish.com or anything?
There is. It's old.
Don't go to it. Just follow you at Dan Mirvish.
If they want to see what I did 5 years ago,
okay, that's great. Yeah.
But
we'll follow you on Dan Mirvish.
Follow me on the Twitter, and then Between Us Movie has a website, betweenusmovie.com.
Got it.
They can go to that, at Between Us Movie, Monterey Media, any of those things.
Well, don't go away. Stick around after this week's crash. Let me tell you about this. I was on a podcast called Indie Film Nation, and this episode, it's actually based out of Australia. This podcast, and it's hosted by a guy named Mike Smith, and it was recorded actually in October 2006. So, and they have an amazing theme song. You got to hear this.
gotta be Indie Film Nation.
So I was recorded in October 2006, so this is an older thing, and it's interesting because it shows you like how indie film, conversation about indie film changes, and what you're about to hear is me on Skype, so the audio's not so great, but stick through it because there's good content in this. Audio's not so great, but it was recorded via, wait a second, it might not have been recorded on Skype. I might have actually done it on a phone. Did they have Skype in 2006?
I don't even know if they had phones in 2006.
They did have phones in 2006.
Not in Australia, they didn't.
They did. Well, they might have.
Wireless. Beep, 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 beep.
But I was on the show, so it's an interesting conversation. We're going to listen to this, and then Dan, I'm going to have you back on at the end of the show. We're just going to listen to all these clips from Indie Film Nation, hosted by Mike Smith. This week's Crash, a great conversation about indie film. Give it a listen.
I just want to ask you one simple question off the top. When do you actually sleep?
Well, it's funny you ask. No, I'm just very good at delegating stuff. And I actually work things that I don't necessarily have to do, like the data collection for my book. But I'm actually, I work in a very unusual way. I don't take any phone calls before noon at all.
Yep.
So I don't answer my phone. I try to do most of my communication by email because I talk too much. So I just do a lot of things by email, and it's easier for me to keep track, and I'm very meticulous about scheduling exactly what I'm supposed to do next, which usually is whatever the deadline is. If the deadline's coming up, then that's the thing that ends up being the most important thing to do. So I'm regimented about stuff and have a list of projects going out at least for the next 3 years. So yeah, I'm pretty darn busy, but there's a way to do all that, and I just think it's being diligent and scheduling out your life, your work life.
So, and just one, because I mean that's a phenomenal, top bunch of job descriptions for yourself. But do you use a scheduler, or a BlackBerry, or something to keep on top of everything, or do you use a pen and piece of paper?
I use something analog, which is basically just a piece of paper with lists. I know it sounds not particularly exciting. I mean, while I do use Outlook, and I have a Motorola Q, that's my technical device of choice. I really just go by lists, and what I do every year. This is going to sound really lame, actually, but I learned that Olympic athletes, what they do is they take a list of their goals and they write them down and then put them in their wallet, because every day you reach into your wallet for something, right? So what I do once a year is I write down a list of things to do, which are write a book, expand the Film Threat website, finish this TV show, whatever. It's just a simple list, and I just put it in my wallet every year, and I've done that every year since like '89. I write a list of very simple list, and I keep it in my wallet, and I look at it every day.
Well, that's a handy tip there for anyone out there who wants to take on multiple roles. But your film threat stuff, I mean, obviously it's been in existence for over 10 years now, and it moving into the digital realm where it was used to be a printed magazine. Was that a very difficult period when you were setting that up, obviously going from the print to the internet? And how have you seen the internet affect or change the independent film, blogs and all that?
Wow, that's an amazing question. And we've been around actually 20 years. I started Film Threat as an underground Xeroxed fanzine in 1985 out of high school. So yeah, it's shocking. So it's been around over 20 years now, 21 to be exact. So we're legal, we can drink.
Yes.
But no, it's I don't know. Actually, the transition initially, which we became an online pub in '96. We were still doing the magazine, but it was considered a fallback, let's just do it online for a little bit and we'll retire the magazine, because at the time, paper prices, that year, 96, was the big underground magazine crash. a lot of great underground magazines from the period. There was a magazine out of San Francisco called The Nose. There are a lot of great magazines. They all went under, and the main reason they went under is because paper prices rose dramatically. I mean, it's expensive to chop down forests, grind it into mulch, and bleach it and turn it into paper. And it's also a really inefficient method to get information across because it's out of date the moment that it's physically printed. So I have to say I much prefer the digital realm, but I also blame, our country's paranoia with regard to marijuana. Because if they just allowed farmers to grow hemp, it's an incredible replenishable source of paper and much less expensive. So if only our politicians would just sort of set aside we're talking about hemp that is not going to get you high if you smoke it. It's just stuff that's great for paper use. But we're so paranoid here in the States about that kind of thing, and becoming more and more backwards as the rest of the world catapults ahead of us in so many areas. It's disheartening, but I actually prefer online because something can happen today. I can write about it 5 minutes from now, and hundreds of thousands of people all over the world can read the same thing. I really think that print magazine circulation numbers continue to plummet, including magazine and newspaper subscriptions are way down. People are going online only. The problem is getting people to pay for content online. That's really difficult. So it all has to be advertiser supported. So it's interesting. I think at the time it was a fallback plan, but we really became ahead of the curve. And all the mediums I work in, from film, television, print, and books and magazines, I prefer the web of all of them because you can combine the best aspects. You have photography, music, you have video. I mean, the internet is the best medium to get across data because it also allows you to go deeper into a topic if it interests you, and also it's great in terms of feedback. I can watch the news, and I often, when I ever have on television, which isn't much recently, I'll yell at the TV. I can yell at the person who's writing the story as if there's a comments section. Those are the ones I prefer to write. I can say, here's what I think about this topic. So the internet is absolutely just the best place for me. It sort of fits the way my mind works. The problem is that it hadn't really been invented yet. And we continue to add all kinds of new functionality to the website. So, if the internet was around in '85, I would have started as a website and remained a website. We never would have been a printed magazine.
If you want to show your support for PodCRASH, join Dollar Shave Club. We all shave. I like to shave my face. I shave other places too. Women shave. This is for everybody. Well, this will save you money and time by joining Dollar Shave Club. Go to dollarshaveclub.com/Chris. Simple, high-quality razors, guaranteed, sent to you on schedule. Every month you get a new pack. I am signing up for this because that's a way that I can actually support my own show, which in a way supports me. So go to dollarshaveclub.com/Chris.
Well, the main reason was I was just sick of going to festivals and meeting filmmakers I thought were incredibly talented, but really not particularly, really naive when it came to business, which to me is common. Look, when you want to become a filmmaker, you don't do it because you want to get rich. Trust me. You're lucky to eke out a living as a filmmaker, but it's something I began to notice over and over again is that filmmakers that are very creative aren't particularly savvy when it comes to business. And by not savvy, I mean not knowing what they're supposed to do when they're at a festival, which is you're supposed to get publicity for your movie. And you also have the option of finding an audience, or maybe finding an investor, or maybe finding, finding distribution. There's so many things that you can do, and a lot of filmmakers were at festivals kind of unequipped for what exactly they were about to experience. So I really wrote this book, and I think the guy that really inspired me was a guy named Kevin DeNovis, who I saw his movie way back in the mid-'90s at the Slamdance Film Festival, and he made this brilliant black and white feature film called Surrender Dorothy, and had no idea what to do with this film. I mean, he was very naive, and he was a kid from, the Midwest, and had just made this little movie and was at the festival, and I remember asking him for a press kit, and he didn't have one, and I said, well, do you have this, or do you have a screener of the film, or do you have that? And nothing. He really didn't know what to do. I mean, the guy didn't really... He didn't even know really why he was at the festival. I guess I'm just going to show my movie. And so that's what inspired me, was really just to to get this information to filmmakers as a way to level the playing field, so that, because I began to see filmmakers who were savvy at business were the ones that succeeded, but they didn't necessarily make the best movies.
But obviously you had Film Threat up and running then, and you were also a critic in some manner or form. But with writing,
not anymore.
No, not anymore.
No. I haven't written a film review in 3 years. I mean, I'm very opinionated still, and you'll find that when you're in the industry that people are probably even more critical than critics, because when you speak to other colleagues about their work, they're just you begin to really break it apart and how much the money actually affects the quality and whatnot in these projects. But yeah, I mean, that's where I came from. I never considered myself a very good critic. I think I was a reviewer and more of a fan and more of a passionate advocate, but I don't consider myself much of a critic. I mean, to me, the last film critics were people like Pauline Kael and Roger Ebert, and hardly what is written on the internet today passes for real film criticism and analysis. It's really more like, should I buy the DVD? That's not film criticism. That's just one person's opinion. So I think really film criticism is dead, and I think as the internet has democratized opinions, I really think that the film critic is dead as a job. I mean, I think it's sort of irrelevant, I mean, you can look online and, you can find, trustworthy people registered on bulletin boards, Zach 324 from Cleveland, Ohio is a guy that, I would like to read.
Mm-hmm. And well, on that experience, in the years that you were passing over a cursory eye over people's films, did you ever have any filmmakers confront you when you were less than positive about their work? Did you ever have any amusing experiences? Because down here in Australia we have a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Wright, who made Romper Stomper there back in the 90s, who has in the past been if a film reviewer has passed over a negative comment of his, he's been known to at a certain moment throw a glass of red wine over him. Do you have any stories from those days when you were looking at other people's work in that capacity?
You know what's so funny? No. I mean, I have had many uncomfortable conversations. And it's usually with my friends when I'll see their film and they're asking me what I thought, and I'll be brutally honest with them. And if I'm inspired, I'll send them pages of notes on what they should have done or could have done, or, gee, I wish I'd read your script because you missed an opportunity here, and that's how this should have paid off. But I haven't had any, no one's ever tried to punch me in the face, I mean, I've luckily gotten out of stuff like that. Although I hear Quentin Tarantino is still kind of pissed off that we pointed out that most of his work is derivative of exploitation movies from the 70s. Well, first of all, it was fantastic. I wish I'd done it sooner because, making films turned out to be not as difficult as I thought it once was. I was really, I think, fearing the process, and then when I jumped in, it was a lot of fun. I mean, and it was great to be on the other side. What unfortunately happened is a lot of my colleagues, I think, who knows, perhaps out of jealousy or whatnot, I became a target. So every bad review of the film, and there are a lot of bad reviews of that movie, those are, unfortunately, I think that they take a bias in because I had something to do with it, and I was very opinionated, still am, and was vocal about my opinions, and here I am now. The guy doing it, and suddenly they can now take pot shots at me. So, I think taking a step back and looking at that film, and if I were not involved, someone would say, oh, that's just sort of a fun, cheesy movie and whatnot, and I was mildly entertained, and that's exactly what I was going for, I mean, there are some interesting insights in it, but, I'm not trying to make War and Peace. Yeah. I'm not trying to make a typical depressing, gloomy indie movie. So it was great to be on the other side. I'm going to be doing it again with my next film, but I think I really think it actually helped to have that film as kind of a starter film from the standpoint of it kind of took the air out of that. Now in the next film, it's like, okay, they can look at that fresh and go and judge for themselves really if I'm able to make the transition successfully. But that's been my goal all along. I really, going forward in my career, I just want to write books and make movies and kind of alter between the two. And Film Threat's really just a side project now that's taken on a life of its own. That's run by an incredible staff of passionate people from all over the world. And I'm just happy to, have had a part in starting that.
And when you come to actually make the My Big Fat Independent Movie, your choice of doing a piss take film or taking all those those art house films and all the popular cult films and turning them into comedy flair, what was it that attracted you to do that sort of project rather than undertaking something like you said, the typical art house or indie film?
Well, I mean, I think it was something that I thought about for a long time. I really thought, like, going on the festival circuit and seeing so many movies, I really felt that they began to become cliche, that I was shocked, like, God, independent films are starting to feel too much the same. There's a lot of cliches, a bunch of guys standing in a room all pointing guns at each other, or, they began to be as cliche as any genre. When a genre dies, like the Western, that's when it starts to become a parody of itself. That's, I think, when a genre is dead, and I just wanted to point that out. That it's like, guys, you can investigate other types of territory for making your movie. It doesn't all have to be the same areas of content. It doesn't have to be some familial drama or some violent crime Tarantino ripoff, which is a ripoff of other stuff anyways. I mean, there are other areas to explore. And that's really, I did want to make some kind of a serious statement about, just being more creative outside the areas that seem to be the only ones that people thought of as areas worth exploring in an independent movie. I mean, you can go beyond that. So while yes, it's a toilet humor juvenile comedy, at the same time my intention was also to make some points about the world of film without being too inside, and by that I mean there are fart jokes.
Yeah.
Because farts are funny in any language, so I think that a lot of critics actually took offense at that, that how dare we make fun of these serious movies. And I guess that was the point, is the fact that we did it. And, now it's funny because I see people kind of reevaluating the film and going, it's pretty good. There's this scene and there's that scene, and they look at it as like, maybe it's not as bad as everybody said it was. So I think actually the bad critical reaction probably served us in the big picture, because it lowered people's expectations. And then when they saw it, they thought, hey, it's pretty good. There's a movie theater in the Midwest that's still playing the movie, even though it's been out for like a year.
Yeah.
It's still around. So it's funny how the film is has at least the opportunity. There's a chance that it could end up being a cult movie, which is probably the best fate for that film in the long run.
Yeah, no, I think it's great effort, and look, it took a bit of a wink at the whole independent film scene. Now, speaking of the independent film scene, on the program the other week, I saw an article that was in the Variety magazine that had a big report about a new independent film that was being made called Homeland Security, that was starring Antonio Banderas and Meg Ryan. Now, just tell me, a $25 million film with couple of A-list actors running around, do you class that as an independent film? And
well, that's ridiculous to call it that. But I mean, what they are, independent films put out by studios, or what we call, those are Indiewood. You're going to see this weird thing where studios are going to start making two kinds of movies. They're going to make really low budget films, under $30 million, and that's low budget for a studio. And then they're going to make these big $150 million spectaculars. There'll be nothing in between, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense. And they can dub them all they want, but I think indie actually just helps them brand it when they go to get critical reviews, because critics are kinder to independent films than they are to others. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and what about what is your take have been this current trend with all the online distribution and sites like Google Video and obviously iTunes selling films? Is this a new age for the independent filmmaker to get their work seen out there, and also the audience consuming films differently than what they ever had in the past? Do you see it as an exciting time, or is it going to be fraught with danger for a lot of filmmakers out there?
It's an incredibly exciting time. I think the thing is that that everything is actually going to go the way of the download. And mainly this is due to some trends that I've observed and some articles that I've seen, and I've even written about this. I wrote an article called A World Without Movie Theaters, trying to explain that, hey, someday there will be far fewer theaters. I don't think the movie theater is going to go away, but I think it could change. For example, in the United States, one popular trend in the 60s was to go to the drive-in. In the 50s and 60s, drive-ins thrived, and there were over 6,000 drive-in movie screens in the United States. Currently, there number less than 200 drive-in movie theater screens. And really, it's because people's habits change. That's just a habit that people stopped partaking in. You know, people don't listen to radio plays anymore. They might listen to radio, but they don't listen to radio dramas. Radio dramas died. It's not the right medium for that. So what's happening now is a recent study pointed out that teenagers prefer to watch movies on their computer rather than go to the movies, because going to the movies these days has become such a miserable experience. Ticket prices are expensive. You have to endure annoying commercials. Refreshments are pricey. Parking, driving. I mean, gas prices aren't getting any better. So it's prohibitively expensive. For the cost of one evening at the movies, I can buy 2 or 3 brand new DVDs, and I can watch them on my big screen at home where no one's going to talk or answer their cell phone or be texting while I'm trying to watch the film. So there's actually going to be far less violence at home. You know, so I think what we'll see, and also, and this is not my generation. I mean, I clearly, you know, obviously I'm older, but, you know, I think that, you know, I come from a more thing type of generation. I like to have material things. I like that I have a shelf with 1,000 DVDs on it that I can pull off anytime. But this generation's different. You know, they download stuff and it's all on their drive. Yeah. It's all on their computer. They don't need a shelf. They'd rather not. You know, it's like move around to the next apartment, whatever. I don't have to move all that stuff. So eventually, I believe there's going to be a device that will actually be able to take my entire shelf of 1,000 DVDs, and you'll be able to take those 1,000 DVDs and you'll be able to put it into a video iPod that will play them at exactly the same resolution as a DVD player.
Yeah. It sounds a very interesting concept and of how that's going to be. But for yourself, you've fulfilled the role as a film festival programmer at different times, and with your involvement in the film festival circuit, what's the thing that you enjoy most when you're attending a festival? Being in charge of the programming, or is it just being a punter going along and watching the films?
Well, I'll tell you the thing that, well, first of all, I've been in different capacities. I've worked as a programmer at the Sonoma Valley Film Festival, and I really did that because I thought, well, I wrote the book, I should actually do this job and see what it's like. And it certainly offered some unique perspective to see, you know, what it takes to put together a whole program, which is like putting together a meal. You want to cover all your bases and have a great featured entree, so to speak, featured, you know, premiere movie. But you know, to me, the best part about festivals, I mean, I could talk about the parties and, you know, the celebrities and the cool films and the free drinks. To me, the best part of a film festival, my favorite part of going to a film festival, is seeing a movie I may know absolutely nothing about except for the fact that it's got an interesting picture in the program guide, or it's got a funny title, and the description really doesn't tell me much or give anything away. And I'm seeing the film for the first time, not knowing anything. Part of the problem with going to the movies today is we often know everything before we walk in the door. You know, before we go to see the big summer movies, we know pretty much all the plot points because it's been over-marketed. What you're seeing when you see a film at the film festival is a film kind of in its virgin state. You're seeing it without being burdened by being over-marketed and oversold. So you can be surprised. You can, discover a movie. And you really bring back that sense of when I used to go to the movies as a kid and I knew nothing. I sat down and saw Star Wars for the first time in a theater, and I knew what the title of the movie was. I didn't know anything. I hadn't seen a trailer for the film. I think I saw something commercial that had some monsters in it. I wanted to see it because it looked like it had monsters. I didn't know anything about that movie. And I would love to go back to a day where I know nothing about a film. I sit down. I enjoy movies more when I have no idea what's going to happen. And when I go to a festival, I really don't like to read a lot about the films other than this person made it, that's the title, go see it. And then I will. So my favorite part of the festival is seeing a film unspooled for the first time.
Yeah, yeah, and with the World Festival circuit, and you would have attended many of the festivals, obviously writing the book and just through your work over the years. Is there one film festival that above the Sundances, the Cannes, the Toronto, that you really genuinely look forward to going to each year?
Well, I mean, I would say one that is a personal favorite is South by Southwest. In Austin, Texas. I think it's the best mix of industry, but it also mixes great films, great premieres, with also panels and guests. It's also a great town to go to. It's not in the dead of winter in Park City, Utah. It's navigable, so to speak. So that's my preference is South by Southwest or smaller festivals like that. I mean, I think the problem with festivals like Cannes and Toronto and Sundance is they're so big, they're too big.
So that's it for this week's Crash, but not it for the show, because Dan Mirvish is still here. But I really want to thank Mike Smith and Indie Film Nation. You can see the archives of the show at indiefilmnation.com. You can follow him on Twitter at indiefilmnation, and you can find Indie Film Nation on Facebook. Dan Mirvish, great to have you here on the show.
Chris Gore, great to be here on the show.
Yeah, and great to also just talk to you. You're one of the people I know that will. We talk about indie film because there's so much bullshit when it comes to entertainment news.
Yes.
I mean, it is just
it's entertainment journalism. It's an oxymoron.
Right.
It really is.
Wild claims and bullshit, and everybody presenting the perfect version of themselves. What are the perfect or everything is no matter how bad things are, just like this smiling version. In fact, a friend of mine said to me once, he goes, our job in entertainment is to be as successful as we possibly can, but no matter what, once we've kind of made it to at least some level, to lie to everyone else about how great it is.
Yes.
That's our job. So,
right.
So you're hugely successful, worth millions, successful filmmaker. Movie coming into theaters on June 21st.
June 21st.
Between Us.
Between Us is the name of the
Look,
movie.
you can find it.
Julia Stiles.
Tay Diggs, great cast.
Melissa George, David Harbour.
And you can go to betweenusmovie.com.
Betweenusmovie.com, yes. And you can watch the trailer on the iTunes. You can follow the Twittering at Between Us Movie. Yes, yeah. At Between Us Movie or at Dan Mirvish.
You probably just Google it, you'll find it. I mean,
you may find bad reviews if you Google it, but
yes,
so you don't
ignore
Google,
those.
whatever you do, don't Google it.
Ignore them. Ignore those. But I just any final thoughts on the world of indie film? I talked about a lot of stuff, and I have to apologize to my listeners who stuck through that, just because the audio quality is. I'm on a phone talking to Australia.
Yeah,
and kind of weird.
They're standing upside down, underwater.
Right, the toilets spin a different direction. It's true,
absolutely. So, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts on the world of indie film?
See the movie. I mean, I think that. This Between Us, some people are going to like it, some people aren't going to like it. I mean, it's pretty heavy. I mean, this is a fun, light conversation.
There are light moments in the movie. There are a lot of light. There's humor.
And when you see it actually with an audience, and I have, because it's been to 21 festivals in 7 countries. It won the Grand Jury Prize at the Bahamas International Film Festival. And people do laugh, surprisingly, in odd places. Because it is heavy, but you have to, lighten it up a little bit. But I think, the story behind the story is how we made it. No money. Actors, the first question you ask actors is do you have any peanut allergies? Because you're going to be eating a lot of peanut butter sandwiches. So if we can afford those. And these actors committed, the crew committed, the crew all worked for free until eventually some of them got paid a little bit, but not much. I still haven't gotten paid, but it's not about that. It's about, is it 90 minutes of interesting entertainment or something?
And it's amazing. When you first walked in my place to record on the podcast, the first thing I said to you was, "Great job, it's brilliant. You should be directing TV." And you were like, "Is that a compliment?" I said, "Yes, I meant that as a compliment."
These days that is a compliment.
Yeah,
No, it really is.
It's
Yeah.
great drama. It's really good. So that would be the thing. I think
Yes.
that this will lead to other great indie film works from you, but also directing television.
Yeah, because
I'd love to
from
see
what I
you
understand,
doing
that pays actually.
Yes, they do. They do pay you to do this.
That is shocking.
They pay
Shocking
you.
to me. Well, it's funny because we had just wrapped between us and finally finished shooting everything, and it was a long shoot. I mean, the principal photography was 3 weeks, but we had 2 weeks rehearsal. We had a day on top of a mountain where that snow scene is filmed. There's stuff in Nebraska, stuff in New York. Finally come back, and there's a crew from a TV show scouting my house to film in my house. And I've now made more money renting out my house than I have from directing anything ever. And that's indie filmmaking in LA.
Yes. Well, I think the most successful indie filmmakers
Just say yes. I had Kiefer Sutherland in my house. Damn it, Chloe. But he was there and shooting Touch, and they were great, and he was terrific. And I'm like, man, I'm making a lot more money here than
You do have a great house. Well, Dan, it's first of all great having you as a guest. Thank you for coming by my place.
Thank you for being here. It's a wonderful place, and I'm ready to put my pants back on and hit the road again. Go to the next podcast.
We'll both put our pants back on. And you can, of course, as always, you can follow me at that Chris Gore. You can follow the show at PodCRASH Show. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/PodCRASH. Go to iTunes and look, if you think I deserve it, give me a 5-star review because it...
Or a 6. Can you give a 6-star review?
You can't give a 6, but it just...
I would.
It does... Well, it helps...
I don't know how to use iTunes.
It helps other people discover the show because
Yes.
it boosts our ranking on iTunes. So I really appreciate that. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Chris. And let's get out of here.
Take the vitamins. I will. Take them now while I'm watching.
Your boyfriend got ID.
He's a she. You gotta roll.
I said you're a mom.
I tested you. You lied. I tested you and you failed. Looking for this? I'll be your brother and your father and your lover and your landlord and your dealer and your teacher and your lover. I'll be your everything. And all you'll have to be is my Dorothy.
Hey, if you're still listening to this, you're probably a lot like me. You're the kind of person that seeks out indie films, bottom of the video store shelf, or the Z's, or the lower letters on the VOD. When you scroll way, way down, or you go to film festivals and you try to find that obscure indie movie that has a crazy title that you have no fucking clue what the movie's about.
Or the volunteer at that movie.
Or the volunteer at that movie doesn't even know what it's about. And if you're the kind of person who seeks out indie movies because you want experiences that are beyond the multiplex, then you and I are a lot alike, and I like you. And for that, you shall be rewarded. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope to PodCRASH with that Chris Gore, 5042 Wilshire Boulevard, PMB 1500, Los Angeles, California 90036. Your self-addressed stamped envelope will be returned with the PodCRASH Fan Club Kit. It's absolutely free. Later.